One of the things that surprised me the most is that most people don't know the story about the Nephilim and the giants and the fallen angels. It's one of those puzzle pieces. If you don't get it, you're going to miss the whole point. It's like the crucial letter, that you need to get. And if you don't, you're not going to really understand what's going on in this world. But once you do, you can get a much more clear understanding of what is really happening around us. If you were a lover of ancient aliens like I was, then you would know that every civilization in the world has some depiction of giants. Their culture have some memory of it. They're carved on their walls. They're in their paintings. We've all seen it. Ancient aliens have shown us the same 4 or 5 paintings or wall carvings. But there's so much more out there that we're going to explore today than just a few carvings in a wall. We're going to take you around the world and we're going to blow your mind. This is an interesting piece from the Book of Watchers. When the sons of man had multiplied in those days, beautiful and comely daughters were born to them. And the watchers, the sons of heaven, saw them and desired them. And they said to one another, "Come, let us choose for ourselves wives and daughters of men, and let us have children for ourselves." And Shamiel, the chief, said to them, "I fear that you will not want to do this deed, and I alone shall be guilty of the great sin." And they all answered him and said, "Let us all swear an oath, and let us all bind one another with a curse, that none will turn back from their counsel until we fulfill it and do this deed." Then they all swore together and bound one another with a curse, and they were all of them 200 who descended in the days of Noah into the peak of Mount Hermon. And they called the Mount Hermon because they swore and bound one another with a curse on it. These and all others with them took for themselves wives, and from among them such they chose. And they began to go into them and defile themselves through them, and to teach them sorcery and charms, and to reveal to them the cuttings of roots and plants. And they conceived with them and bore with them great giants, and the giants begot Nephalem, and to the Nephalem were born, and they were growing in accordance with their greatness. That really wasn't the plan in the first place. They were put in charge, as the book stated earlier, to assist men, to be able to guide them. They were put over different regions of the earth to be able to shelter men and to guide them in the ways of God, to keep them holy. Instead, they decided to make this evil pact, and this evil pact brought on great destruction for the rest of the world. So the story goes on in the book of Enoch. It said that when these giants roamed the earth, they became so large that they were eating up all the livestock, all the vegetation, and the humans couldn't sustain them any longer. And the giants turned on the humans and started eating them. And that's where you find in the Bible where God commands the Israelites to go and kill like the Canaanites, and to kill every man, woman, and child, and even their animals, because they had manipulated and genetically mixed in angel DNA with the humans and mixed the DNA of all the animals, that they were abomination and they were cannibals and they were ravishing beasts. But then you might say, well, they were all destroyed in the flood of Noah's day. But I found a really interesting scripture in the Aramaic Targum. If you're not familiar with the Aramaic Targum, it was a translation from Hebrew to Aramaic when the Israelites were taken captive in Babylon. And they stayed there for 80 years. And during that So while they were there, they lost their mother tongue, Hebrew, and they had to translate the Hebrew into Aramaic when they were finally released and went back to Jerusalem. So this is a direct translation from the Hebrew. So this story is about Lot, how when he was taken captive by the kings, actually giants, and the giant Og found out about it and decided to go to Abraham, and this is what's written in the Aramaic Targum. An Og king who had been spared from the giants that died in the deluge and had ridden up protectively upon the top of the ark and sustained with food by Noah, not being spared by high righteousness, but that the inhabitants of the world might see the power of the Lord and say, where there were not giants who in the first time rebelled against the Lord of this world and perished from the earth. But when these kings made war, behold, Og, who was with them, said in his heart, I will go and show Abram concerning Lot. So there were giants in the earth after the flood. Many had survived, maybe through going into caves. And we know this one, at least the story goes, he rode on the top of the ark. Well, so now that we've established that it is our history, or at least it's in our history books, the ones that you can rely on, the old ones, not the ones that were written by the school today that embellish and make up a whole bunch of stuff, but our true history of what was our past. As I'm going to show you, it is our present, or at least these clippings are showing you from newspaper clippings back. Here is one from 1947, and they found one in Death Valley, and let's see, a skeleton of a person 10 feet tall found. I don't know the date of that. Oh, look at this one. It says, men must have been giants, a giant skeleton 18 feet tall. It just goes on and on. Of course, they told you all of these giant bones were photoshopped, and you can't believe any of that. Why would there ever be giants? What I heard is the Smithsonian took a lot of, every time they get a find and somebody finds one of these giant bones, they take it from them, and then nobody knows whatever happened. And I've heard that they take it out to sea and they just dump it in the ocean. They dump all of the evidence of giants in the ocean. Or they crush them up, or they do whatever it is, but they get rid of them as soon as they can. Any guesses, people? I'm thinking a wine goblet. What do you think? Maybe just a statue? Maybe not. And this isn't one of a kind. It actually comes from a library of thousands of books that are just as used as this one. Well, that's pretty neat. It's sort of like the cannons. Nobody can operate them either. They're way too large for us. I can't remember the full story about this priest, but what I do remember is that he found all of these giant treasures in a cave system, and he brought them out, and there was tons of them, and they were all made out of gold. He died before he was able to tell anybody where the treasures were buried, where the rest of them were. The old sword in the stone. I don't know if this is a real picture, but there are a lot of artifacts like this all around the world. These are really interesting. They litter the world of these hands or feet that are coming out of the ground. Quite creepy, if you ask me. Like as if they're rising again. Just for show, what do you think? Nothing to see here. This is one of my favorites. All the enormous doors. Talk about impractical, and do we need it? Take a look at these. You gotta remember there are buildings that are attached to these doors and rooms that would be just as large as these. Definitely not made for you and I. But this is the cream of the crop coming up. Actual photographs of giants. There are so many of them, I had to pick and choose as to what I was going to put out today. You would never know he was a giant if you saw him on his own. Like if he was photographed, he would just look like a normal person. His body portions are exactly like ours. And him, he looks like a normal guy, you know, just shrink him half the size and he would be your best friend next door. Now this guy is a little bit odd. You do find that a lot in the giants. They have this kind of a smooshed look to their face, or like things just don't quite fit. Now, is she a little person or is he just a really big giant? But look at the chairs. You can tell that he is a giant by the furniture. He seems to be rather annoyed. I don't know who is annoying him, the little guy, or is the giant annoying the little guy? He just looks like a really lanky guy, but a really lanky guy that's about 8.5 feet tall. Well, that's service. There again, you've got that odd looking face. Just doesn't quite seem right. And there you go with her too. Remember that smooshed face? Seems to be a common trait. You see this woman quite a bit, and she is an odd-looking person as well. She's got some strange features about her. There's another picture of her later on. And giants come in all nationalities. No one is spared. Look at that. There's like a footstep behind him, and his head is as high as the arch at the top. Now, by looking at her, you would just think she was a really beautiful woman. She's got perfect form. I'm also wondering who these people are, the small people. Are they their handlers? Are they their servants? They seem to be more in charge of the people. I don't know, it's just kind of odd. I always wondered what in the world is going on there. Is that Sigmund Freud? That's really neat. Look at this picture here. Those are real skeletons. And he is so odd. He's got that weird looking face again. Just ginormous. Look at his hands. They're extremely odd. I remember reading somewhere that this guy was royalty. There's a bunch of pictures that you can see of him. And most of the people that I believe that you're seeing are of royal descent alone. the Nephalem line. Now this is Amelia. I couldn't find very much about her, but she is a giant. These two ladies have been filmed all over the place. And like I said before, Nephilims come in all different forms. One of them is a vampire. The other one is a werewolf, or whatever you can think of. A mermaid, a centaur, a birdman. Use your imagination. The fallen angels sure did. Now, Julia Pastrella is an interesting case. They actually caught her and tamed her, and she lived in a village and eventually married and had 4 children whose descendants are alive today. You need to go to Merlin's museum. It's an old museum that they collected these oddities around the 1900s. And the kind of things that he has in his museum, or what they've released to us now, are the most phenomenal, amazing Nephalem that you've ever seen. Did you guys ever watch The Arrival with Charlie Sheen? That's what they look like. And yes, they come in little people too. Considering all of these pictures were taken kind of around the same time period, I'd say within 10 to 20 years, there sure were a lot of giants back in those days. I love vintage photos, that's why I put them in my videos all the time. But let's look at some modern day giants, because believe me, they didn't go away. So I want to show you some beautiful women. They don't actually have to look all smushed in the face, they can be gorgeous. Just take away the other women and they look stunningly beautiful, all of them. Do you remember she played a fallen angel in Constantine with Keanu Reeves? I don't know. Is she even a she? And is she even a human? So beautiful and innocent looking. I can just imagine her saying, "It's time for you to go to bed. Only big boys can stay." I bet you just thought your sports heroes just ate their Wheaties. So let's go back to the story from the book of Enoch about the fallen angels and the Nephalem and who they really are. Now, I'm not saying that any of these people that we're looking at today are Nephalem or have Nephalem blood in them. It is an oddity that is something that we truly are not aware of. Or at least you weren't up until now, or I wasn't until recently, let's put it that way. They do not love us, they're not from us. We are cattle to them to do with what they will. And they continue to repeat the same things that we're seeing today over and over again. And usually it comes with great loss on our part, not for them. When you look around and you find out that there truly are giants and where they come from, that they're Nephilim, they're the sons and daughters of fallen angels, and they don't have the same spirit as we do. They have a more vicious spirit, and they are cannibals and consuming of humans. Another thing that the Nephilim did is they sacrificed children to their god Moloch. Those are the things that we're seeing today and that we're hearing in the news about Dreamacrone and sacrificing children. So I think it's about the time when the rise of the Nephilim. And the Bible tells us that in the last days, they will arise again. The fallen Nephilim will arise again. The book of Enoch goes on to tell us that the Nephilim were only given 500 years to live. And at the end of that, they didn't go to a heavenly kingdom like humans are supposed to. Instead, they were to roam as hungry, vicious demons on the earth. Not the fallen angels, but their children. If you like this content, please support me by liking and sharing and subscribing. Get right with God, people, because I believe we are in the last days.